Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to sneak up on a lot of people. I'll tell you how far I think they can go in just a second.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Barbershop here on Locked On NFL, and it's Friday, so that means my man Matt Williamson from the Peacock and Williamson podcast is going to join me today. We got so many years of credentialed media access, I lose count. It's probably 35 or 40 if you add it up with both of us right now. So we think we're going to be able to take you through some of the biggest stories around the league today here on Locked On Jaguars, an episode that you can find wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you tap in to that location each and every day, whether you watch or listen. You just don't want to miss it, and I don't want you to miss it either. What are we missing? The fact that we have everydayers that show up every day, and we're glad that they do that. And if you're new, we're going to give you a reason to come back. Here's where we're going, all right? We're going to end up talking about the Packers. They're also a scary team, right? But they're scary in two ways, in a good and a bad way. We'll go over both of those right in the middle of the show, talk about how the Bucs, even though they have injury problems, they're getting some of their big-time players back, and that's going to help them as they get closer to the regular season. But we're going to start at the very top with the Steelers. Will they sneak up on people like I think? And I'm going to tell you why I believe that. It ain't got nothing to do with Aaron Rodgers, Matt. It's the team that you obviously cover, you're very close to. Like you say, they signed you. They got their name on the checks that you get every month. So I just think that they've done it in the trenches. And I'm a big trench dude. And I think when people start looking at the skill positions, they'll think about wide receiver. They'll think about the version of Aaron Rodgers that they've seen the last couple of years. And they'll forget that this game is all about blocking and tackling.
Yeah, and really, if you go to like drafthistory.com and pull up the Steelers drafts, it is a remarkable change in investing in big people when Omar Khan took over as GM. Like, I love Kevin Colbert. I have a great relationship with him. I think he was a phenomenal GM. But there was a long stretch where they ignored offensive linemen much too much. And as soon as Omar took over, he started drafting tackles and Zach Frazier and McCormick and now Harmon and Benton. Big, nasty people. And this is AFC North football. It's Tomlin football. And that's 100% where it starts. So I'm 1,000% with you. And I think the O-line has questions, but it has a lot of upside. The D-line, to me, has no questions, especially if you're including Watt and Highsmith and those edge guys, you know.
Added Jalen Ramsey, too, on the back end.
Yes.
They got more high-end stuff. You saw what Jalen brings last night in the preseason game, man. He'll get a personal foul penalty, too, just to make sure he sends a little message. But it's all about the offensive line. Check out my man, Chris Carter, who you knew very well.
To me, Broderick Jones is like boom or bust. Troy Fautano is just very steady. You're not going to notice him that much, and probably in a good way. He's very solid, very dependable, and I think mature beyond his one NFL game. Like, he doesn't look like a rookie at all, ever, at any point I've ever spoken to him. But I think Broderick Jones has a nice trajectory. Like, I'm not saying he's perfect yet, but if you look at where he was in April, you look at where he is now, there's some real progress.
Some players, man, have spoiled us in the NFL. We think that everybody's going to come into the league and be Tristan Wirfs. It just doesn't work like that, man. If you think about Trey Smith as the highest paid guard in the National Football League, Trey Smith was a 6th-round pick that had medical red flags maybe by a whole bunch of teams in the National Football League, big-time recruit. Sometimes it takes a while, and guys get into that third year and people start calling them bust. Football people don't look at it that way, though, do they?
No, they don't. And I know Chris's guest, Alan Saunders, quite well, too. Had some beverages with him at training camp. And I'm going to argue with him a little bit. And I know it's only a small sample size, training camp, preseason. Broderick Jones has been very steady. I mean, he's gotten to the point now where he's less of a wild card. We'll see when the bullets are flying for real. But he's lost weight. He's now not bouncing between left and right tackle. He's just staying on the left side. And he's the most comfortable I've ever seen him. And where I'll also fight him is he mentioned Faltanu as being steady. I think he's spectacular. And I'm trying not to have black and gold colored glasses, but I watch him go one-on-one against Watt time and time again. And the way he moves, and I'm like, man, he's going to be one of the better right tackles in the league.
Yeah, you heard a lot about him at draft time. And sometimes, like I say, when they don't have that instant success, folks forget. Now, there's another team, the team that Pittsburgh went up against in their preseason finale, the G-Men, the Giants. When I look at the Giants, I don't feel quite the same way, obviously, as I do with the Steelers. But I do look at Andrew Thomas, and then I look at the other side of the ball, and I look at those trenches. And Dexter Lawrence is right at the very top of all of those tackles in the league, him and Vita Vea. No disrespect to anybody else, but then they got those young pass rushers. And I'm starting to look at their team, and I'm thinking, were they just a quarterback away? Was it the headache, or was it the hangover from letting Saquon go and he goes to your rival? Was it paying the wrong person? I'm not saying Russell Wilson's great. I'm not saying Jackson Dart is going to continue to be great outside of the preseason, and Jameis is Jameis. But what I am going to tell you is this. Player confidence in the quarterback position looks to be a little bit higher. And I'm going to let my homie, Patricia Trainer, talk to you about the Giants real quick.
The New York Giants capped a perfect preseason with a convincing 42-10 win over the New England Patriots. The Giants, who got 5 touchdown passes from quarterbacks Tommy DeVito, Jackson Dart, and Jameis Winston combined, finished their preseason by scoring 107 points in 3 games. To put that into perspective, the total represents 17 more points than what the Giants scored in their last 5 games of the 2024 season, and 39.1% of what they scored in 17 games all of last year.
Now, listen, I grew up rooting for Joe Gibbs in Washington. They went 0-4 one year, and it was the best team they ever had. That's when Brian Mitchell was a rookie, and they won the Super Bowl. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I want my team to go undefeated in the preseason. But I will also say, if you take the score out of it, I watched the Giants. The Giants look a lot better in person than I thought they would, considering their record.
I'm with you. Now, they have an awful schedule, and we just talked about the Steelers' defensive front. I think the Giants is first or second. I think they're the best 2 defensive fronts in the entire league, led by Lawrence, as you mentioned. And I kind of do think they were a quarterback away from being relevant. I'm not saying they're winning the Super Bowl this year, but when you go from Jones and DeVito to Russell Wilson, Winston, and a guy like Dart that has some upside, you're going to see improvement. And I do think Daboll's a really good offensive mind. But I think the name you mentioned that's most important is Andrew Thomas. You know, it wouldn't shock me if they draft a right tackle or a guard or a center high next year. The line's not perfect, but without that guy, it was a real problem.
A serious problem. And like you said, I just think that they're that team, man, even if they don't go 500 or better, that's a hard out. That's a hard out. And if Jackson Dart doesn't play at all, he has looked the way that you want a guy that you pick in the late first round to look. He couldn't look any better than he's already looked. And we got to remember, even the great Patrick Mahomes didn't play very much his first year. So I think we don't need to get into the business of continuing to rush quarterback. Everybody ain't going to be Jaden Daniels, man, and everybody always gets spoiled by the latest and the greatest thing that they've seen. All right, the Bucs have had some some injuries. They've had a lot of them, including the rookie. But they also are getting guys back. So we're going to try to balance that out a little bit for the Tampa fans so they won't be worried about their season. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of year. Best time of year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with fantasy football experiences like never before. This year, me and my homies with the Showtime and Playmakers League, we're playing Yahoo Fantasy for the 20th year. You need to get in on it too if you're playing for your 30th, 50th, or millionth league, right? All right. I always use Yahoo because they're the absolute best. You never have computer errors. I absolutely love Yahoo Fantasy. To celebrate 20 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days through August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues. a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give your new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play head-to-head or private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, we're moving and grooving here on Locked On NFL, where it's your team every day. Always thanking you for making us your first listen. And the everydayers know when I talk about a team and their injuries, I usually get a lot of comments, and I got to come and backtrack a little bit, or just to kind of make the natives a little bit calm them down a little bit. So I'm going to show you what got people all fired up, and then I'm going to tell you something good about Tampa Bay. Here's my man James Yarko from Locked On Bucks.
It's a mixed bag of injury news, with the biggest questions being Morrison and Rashad moving forward. Hopefully we're going to get more clarity on that in the coming days. I hate to see both of those guys missing time right now. It hurts Morrison more than it hurts Rashad, for sure. Rashad's spot is cemented. He's locked in as the number 2 running back on this team. He is going to get plenty of opportunity, plenty of volume, as we'll talk about a little bit later. But Morrison has a lot of ground to make up with all this time he's been missing. And I'm just afraid that it's going to create a situation now where Morrison missed a ton of time in training. You go back, he missed part of mandatory minicamp dealing with that injury as he tried to come back from hip surgery. Now he's dealing with a hamstring injury.
Morrison is the rookie safety out of Notre Dame. Rashad White is the running back he's talking about. Mitigated a little bit by the fact that Bucky Irvin is a superstar, I think, in the making it running back. But here are the 2 big things that happened right before I started the show today. I saw this and I said, this is big news. Tristan Wirfs, who scared everybody to death when he had a knee injury. Everybody thought he was going to be missing time. He is activated off of the PUP list. All right. Tristan Wirfs right now is top of the food chain when it comes to left tackles. No disrespect to Trent Williams, but he's young, he's big, he's strong. He's the catalyst for that team. And Chris Godwin, who we saw get hurt in prime time last year, has recovered now again from another injury, and he's done that in the past. Those 2 guys combined with Mike Evans, those are the leaders of that team, and that's who Baker Mayfield is going to lean on. I think at some point in the first quarter of the season, they're going to have all 3 of those guys back for a full contingent of weapons for the Bucs.
It's huge, and it's big news, and frankly, I think they can withstand the Godwin injury for as long as he's out, even with Jalen McMillan missing time, because I think Ibuka is a star in the making, and Evans is not losing a step. So they're going to be just fine with weapons. Wirfs still scares me. I mean, any game you're not playing with that guy, to me, is going to be hard to overcome. But the fact that it's short term, sign me up. I'm definitely picking the Bucs to win that division.
I love Tampa's team.
Yeah.
I think if Tampa, people forget, man, they beat the Eagles and they beat the Lions last year, right? And they were the team nobody wanted to see. And Washington did a whole bunch of favors for people by knocking them off in that playoff game. Because if they get to that next round, now you're looking at Lions, Eagles, Rams, and Bucs. You're looking at the 4 that people thought they were going to see. And the Bucs are a scary team because they have those people. We didn't even mention Vita Vea. We haven't even mentioned Levante David.
Yeah.
Winfield, all of those players, man. And Todd Bowles, who's been there, he gets a lot of criticism from a lot of people. I think they're a really, really, really good football team with Baker Mayfield having come back from Never Land when it comes to quarterback. He crawled out of purgatory. And he is actually the dude now that is the example. Every time you think somebody's going to get a quarterback, whether it's Anthony Richardson or whoever, and we're going to make him into what he was supposed to be, Baker Mayfield is the poster child for that stuff. The Broncos, I doubted them last year. I always say this. I doubted them last year. I said Sean Payton's going to get fired messing around with Bo Nix, and then they went to the playoffs and have a real good defense. Now I'm not doubting them anymore. But what I am going to do is say this. When you pay a lot of money for a tight end, you shouldn't be talking about you need a tight end. But Evan Ingram, and I know this firsthand from being a Jaguars fan, he's a one-trick pony, man. He's like a glorified big wide receiver. So
yeah.
they're going to always feel like they need another tight end. And here's my guys from Locked On Broncos to show you exactly what I'm talking about.
This is the number one most uncomfortable, because I think the Broncos are one Evan Ingram injury away from utter disaster at tight end. I mean, that's where we're at. Caleb Lohner is so raw, and Lucas Kroll just has not been consistent enough for me. I think personally, this would be the number one on my list, circled in red. Like, we have to get somebody here to help.
Availability is your most important ability. He wasn't available for the Jaguars a lot over the last 2 seasons. And even when he is there, he ain't a good blocker. So I think this is going to be a challenge.
I do find it interesting that they traded Vele, and I was shocked that they got as much in return for him. But I think Ingram's a lot like Vele more than he is an inline tight end, move kind of blocker guy, obviously. I think they got a great O-line. They must be very comfortable with their pass catchers, or they wouldn't have traded Vele. Guys like Franklin and Mims, I think, are stepping up, and they drafted a kid I like as well, another big body dude, Bryant. But that makes sense. I hadn't thought of a tight end need for the Broncos, and I'd be looking for a bruiser.
Yeah, man, you got to get somebody that's going to be able to be an inline blocker and a threat in the red zone. I like Evan Ingram. The thing is though, I don't think he's going to do a lot eating up the middle of the field unless he's dragging across. He ain't necessarily the seam killer that people would imagine that a guy like that would end up being. But I think they got a good team. They got a good defense, and I trust Sean Payton in his process. Now, we're going to get to somebody else in that.
Wait, I think that's the key is I just trust Sean Payton.
Yeah, man, that's a big one. And I feel the way about Pittsburgh because I trust Mike Tomlin.
Right.
I want to talk. We're going to talk about Pete Carroll. Now, there's no clip in the third segment from the Raiders, but I really want to talk about him. We're going to piggyback on that a little bit. But first, we're going to discuss Micah Parsons and a destination that the host of Locked On Packers, Peter Bukowski, has already said the Packers need to just load up and make a move for Micah Parsons. We'll discuss that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by BetterHelp. These days, it feels like there's advice for everything. Cold plunges, gratitude journals, screen detoxes. But how do you know when things actually work for you? With so much information online about mental health and wellness, it can be overwhelming to figure out what's true and what will actually help. That's where talking to a licensed therapist through BetterHelp can make all the differences. You get real personalized guidance instead of just guessing based on something you saw on social media. Now, I know for a fact I suffer from depression. I've had family members suffer from depression, and everybody seems to have an answer when they're not a professional. You don't have to worry about that because with over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform serving more than 5 million people. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, man, here with my man, Matt Williamson. I want to get to the Packers real quick. The Green Bay Packers are one of those perplexing teams. It's like I like them, and sometimes they look great. I think they can beat anybody, but it also seem like the kind of team that could lose to anybody. So when I say they're scary, I mean they're scary in two ways. I'd be afraid if I was a fan, but I'd also be afraid if I was an opponent going into Lambeau because they got weapons. They can rush the passer. I like the head coach. I like their coordinator. I like the scheme. I like their quarterback more than people think I do. But Peter Bukowski says they could be better. And the move that he talks about here is a no-brainer for not just them. It should be for 32 teams, but one of them acts like they don't get that. So we'll talk about the other 31 teams about Micah Parsons. Check this out.
It's time for the Green Bay Packers to cash in the chips. Overpay if you have to. Go all in for Micah Parsons. This has gotten personal. Micah Parsons has said he's done. And we've seen players say that before. But the Cowboys don't seem to have any interest in paying Micah Parsons. And whether he's actually going to be traded or not is almost irrelevant to this point. But this is the kind of player we have seen Brian Gutekunst target in the past. It is almost bar for bar, the Khalil Mack situation. Mack was gettable. It doesn't seem like the Cowboys have any intention of trading trading Micah Parsons. They just want to engage in this standoff. And I also understand any Packer fan who says, I watched the Cowboys documentary and I saw the reaction of Jerry Jones. I heard what was said, called it the worst loss in the team's history since he'd been there. It is hard to believe that Jerry Jones would want to trade Micah Parsons, A, and B, that he would want to trade Micah Parsons to the team that inflicted, in the very recent past, the worst loss in Jerry Jones' Cowboys history, which to Jerry Jones is Cowboys history. I understand all of that. But if he's on the fence, it would take a Godfather offer to push him to the side of making the trade, which means the Packers, maybe they have to pay a Packers tax. But if there's a big offer on the table, it is going to have to be big. You're going to have to give up, man, a lot. Probably a player like Rashawn Gary, multiple high picks. I would think at least one, if not two first-round picks. You would have to do that. If you add Micah Parsons, I do think you become the favorite. Like, I would solidly say I think the Packers become the favorite.
The Packers are one of those teams that could give up a whole bunch of resources and including 2 starters, maybe an offensive lineman and Rashawn Gary and 2 first-round picks. If they get Micah Parsons, they draft well enough because they know who they are, to the point where I don't think it would kill them. Most teams, if you give up this kind of compensation, it's like, okay, we got him, but we ain't got nothing else. I think Green Bay could actually do it.
I think that's a tremendous point. There aren't many teams that can send a young player back that wouldn't, be missed that much. This is a move to try to win it all. I can't say I agree. I could agree with Peter anymore. I think this is a push your chips in. I'm usually not the push your chips guy in. I'm kind of the slow and steady kind of builder. But we've seen that for a long time in Green Bay, and it's gotten them far, but not far enough. I think Love's ready to take a step. I think they got serious weapons. Like Kraft, the tight end's one of my favorite young players in the league. The O-line's going to be fine. And if I'm building a defense and I get one player to pick from, I'm taking Parsons for sure. I'm not even sure who number 2 is. At any position, he is my first pick when you consider age and all that stuff. Now, if the Cowboys aren't going to trade him, I'm calling the Bengals for Hendrickson then. Go give me somebody. It's time to be aggressive and go win that North.
I would push my chips in too. And see, that's the part about drafting well, right?
Yeah.
When you draft well and guys prove it on tape, you are allowed to do that. You can do that if you're them. You can go, hey, we got some things that can Dallas can really look at Green Bay's roster, pick 2 players and a couple of draft picks and absolutely make themselves better.
Green Bay put a lot of money in the bank,
Yeah, and that's what the draft is all about. It's all about not necessarily getting guys to play well right now. It's about having those types of people. I want to get to the Raiders real quick because we talked about Sean Payton, and I promised that I would shift over. The Raiders under Pete Carroll. I've watched them a little bit in the preseason. We know they have Max Crosby. We know they got some really good players. But I noticed what they've done the last 2 years. Now, some of this was not on Carroll and Spytek's watch, and some of it was on their watch because they had this offseason. Getting Brock Bowers and then getting Ashton Genti. They legitimately got 2 of the most dominant college football players over the last 2 years that we've ever seen, or we've seen in recent memory. But they play positions that are not considered premium positions based on the top 6, which is quarterback, left tackle, center, pass rusher, corner, and some people, consider right tackle and left tackle even now. But, there were 5 or 6 positions. Running back has been devalued. The tight end position has been, you can find a guy. These dudes are different, though. And I think when you keep piling up football playing Jessies, guys that love the game like that, and add that to Pete Carroll and how he wants to coach, I think the Raiders are a hard out each and every week this year for some people. And they are the AFC version of what I feel about the New York Giants.
Oh, good comp. Better quarterback play. You're not dealing with Aiden O'Connell and those type of dudes anymore. I think the O-line's starting to shape up. The coaching, GM, coordinator, owner, all that stuff change, I can't stress enough, is sending this team absolutely in the right direction. And the premium position thing just kind of hit me in the forehead when you were talking about Genti and Bowers. Like, if they did play a premium position, they're the first pick in the draft. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, there's good a prospect at their position as you ever see. If that's a left tackle or a quarterback or an edge rusher, that's Myles Garrett,
Yep. Yeah, man. I mean, when you just think about that, and you could do that with a lot of people. You could say you could say Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter. Boy, when they were in college, they were real good.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm talking about what they're cut from here, and the way they grind on you and pound on you, and you forget this is what the NFL game is all about. It's about one-on-one matchups. Yeah. Man, I'm not telling you anything, but we're just gonna go through this just for housekeeping's sake.
I mean, like Genti's so hard to tackle.
And that was the point I was about to make.
Okay.
In football, you say, well, what went wrong? We like to blame people for everything. I heard Florida State's defensive coordinator, Tony White, say something this week. Hey, if the ball beats you, it happens, right? And sometimes things happen. There are plays that are designed for guys to be matched up one-on-one. If the defense does everything it's supposed to do and the offense gets all of their blocks, Ashton, Genti, you are going to be one-on-one with somebody. That is a difficult thing for that defensive player.
Especially if it's a corner or a safety or no matter who it is. But it's
You've already seen him run somebody over, right? So, and then now you look up and Brock Bowers. I had former NFL players and some of them that played at Georgia. They called Bowers cyborg. We ain't never seen nothing like this. This dude is he an H-back? Is he a wide receiver? Whatever. He's a football player, right? Mm-hmm. And now you got both of them. It's like they're the same thing. And it's exactly what Pete Carroll loves. All you got to do is think back to guys like Doug Baldwin and Marshawn Lynch. This is a match made in heaven, and I think it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, and we happened to bring up Broderick Jones earlier, another Georgia Bulldog, and about the same age, etc. And one of my buddies was interviewing Broderick when he was a young player, just in talking about those Georgia teams. And without question, he's, we know how loaded they are. They're like Bama with Saban or the U or whatever. Without question, he's like, oh, Brock Bowers is our best player. Obviously, and they're dripping with first-round picks everywhere at all levels. Jalen Carter, I mean, like all these guys, oh, Brock Bowers is our best player.
And I heard they asked Brock Bowers that question, and this is where I brushed my shoulders off a little bit, because when they asked him, Jaguar fans, he said Trayvon Walker.
Really?
Woo,
okay.
Woo. So
and show up, yeah.
But once again, same thing. It's something in here. They're built a certain way. If you get enough guys on your team like that, man, you'll be all right. A lot of y'all need to start loading up on those dudes in fantasy football, man. You know exactly what I'm talking about, because it is time for fantasy football at Yahoo Fantasy. It's time, man. All y'all got to do is tap into that and make sure you check out the Locked On NFL podcast that we have here called Locked On Fantasy Football with Vinny Iyer and Michelle Majuk, because my drafts are this weekend. I'm going to peep in and get some advice from them and figure out where I need to go. If you want to win some hardware and be a champion, you need to do the same thing. Make sure you check out Locked On Fantasy Football on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Hey, man, we finally got here. We were waiting for that first preseason game. Now that the preseason's been going, everybody can't wait till it ends, right? We're at the last. This is it. We're going to start getting cuts here. We got real live foot-to-toe action in football in about 2 weeks, and I cannot wait for it. Probably less than that, maybe 2 weeks from today or yesterday when those games come on Thursday night, Matt. And we'll give them everything that they need here on Locked On NFL each and every day. Y'all make sure y'all tap in. Also tap into the Peacock and Williamson podcast. They do a very good job over there wherever you get your podcast. We'll see you later.